to the welcome to the NBA Hangout presented by Playbook Sports. I'm your host Brandon. With me, as always, is Dave. Dave, how are you?
I'm great, man. How are you?
Doing good. It's been a couple weeks. I've had some things I needed to attend to. Just been trying to get some scheduling working out, but we're here now. Here to talk about the offseason. Here to talk about the draft. Anything new with you since the last time we've spoken?
For our visual listeners, I grew my beard back.
Look at that.
Yeah, didn't take long.
Back. I've been growing mine for about 30 years.
You're doing good progress, man. Good progress. Just don't race me.
There.
Yeah.
No, not anytime soon. I leave all the racing to you. No, I think we have quite a bit to talk about since we've been away for quite a bit. Like I said, we got the draft to talk about, what certain teams feeling certain needs and how that affects the balance of their roster. We got the offseason to recap, the Sixers, the Pelicans, the Warriors, the Mavs, the Kings, all of that to talk about, and maybe sneak in a little bit of summer league talk. So first, the draft. Like, what was like your major takeaway from the draft this year?
I felt the draft was interesting. Like we were talking about beforehand, I felt it was interesting because of the lack of consensus, the lack of predictability. Zach Edey going as early as he did to Memphis. Nikola Topic. Topic. Falling a little bit. Now, he hurt his knees or ankles ahead of it, so I understand. Yeah, the draft prognosticators, they kind of got it right, like leading in, like who 1 was going to be, who 2 was going to be. But even Reed Shepherd to Houston was a little bit surprising. But he looks really good. Pardon me. He looks really good.
He looks good.
He looks really good in summer league. He plays a very controlled game at his own pace. Doesn't let other people really mess with him. And so that's a good pick. They just got to figure out the rest over there in Houston.
Yeah,
they got a lot of guards.
They got a lot going on over there in Houston. They drafted a guard-ish guy last year, guard to forward type versatile player in Emin Thompson. So, figuring out that rotation. So staying on the Rockets, what do you think they should do here? Like, I think they kind of, the way I see it is, I feel like they kind of need a little bit of a consolidation move at this point because, like we just mentioned, they got Reed Shepherd at guard. You have Van Vliet there. You drafted Eamon Thompson last year. You still have Cam Whitmore, who's looking, on and off, a little inconsistent in summer league this year, but he's still a guy with lots of potential and has lots of upside still. You have Jalen Green playing guard, so you have a lot of guys in that 1 to 2 to 3 spot, even if you're including a guy like Dillon Brooks. So for the Rockets, how do you think they're going to manage this upcoming season?
I think they're going to trade for Jimmy Butler at the deadline.
That would be, if I'm the Rockets, that is the move, because all the other wings are kind of locked up in places. Like, I don't see, like, the one would have been Paul George, and he, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but he went to the Sixers. He might have been the one guy. I know they're trying to hold their cards out for maybe a blow up with Phoenix for KD and Booker, but they might be ready a little bit earlier than that. And if you can see how Miami's first half of the season goes by trade deadline. If they're like a middling team, which they kind of project to be at this point in time, if I'm the Rockets, I kind of have to throw all I got for a guy like Jimmy to take us to the next level. It's home city.
Well, and it's like, I just don't see KD being a great fit in Houston. Whereas, like, and I don't think like I hate to say it, but like a second tier guy like Brandon Ingram would be a good fit there. I don't think that's the consolidation move. I think going and getting like Jimmy Butler is good for them because he's the right type of crazy. Like, he's the right type of guy that's going to come in and yell at everyone and get them to work harder, but they're going to like respect it and not like resent it. Right? This is like the challenge of any type of manager at work. Like I work with some young people, and I like to be like supportive, but I also kind of feel like sometimes I should just yell at them all. It's not my style, but it certainly works for some people. And Jimmy's one of those guys who can do it. He can get performances out of people, and they still like him.
Yeah,
Which
I
is
think
that's a real gift.
it's a real talent, and he certainly takes to a certain type of player. But I think like when you have a guy like Van Vliet there already, Dylan Brooks, I think like those kind of guys kind of would fit well with Jimmy in that sense, like that type of mentality, especially with Ime as their head coach. I think Ime as the head coach makes that all work very well. Now, as a Heat person, I'm definitely not advocating for that, but I know a lot of people, Heat people that are kind of ready to go all in on the youth movement with Miami because they've looked like the youth has looked good for Miami. All their prospects have kind of like shown what they should have shown, and if not more, in these like little moments since the playoffs. So I know there's a section of Heat fans that would definitely welcome that. Me personally would be more against it and just wait out the year, see how it goes with the team that they have, and try to be competitive with it because that's just the way that they kind of operate. But if I'm Houston, I'm 100% throwing that out at Miami and making them have a real choice.
Well, like Tari Eason, Cam Whitmore, Amon Thompson, two of those three guys, a couple picks. That's
It's
pretty good. That's a good package.
It's a really good package. And if I'm Miami and I'm looking to do this quick retool, that's the type of package I'm looking at. Like I'm calling up Houston. I think before the draft, Houston even called out to Miami to offer them something for Jimmy Butler. So they're definitely intrigued with Jimmy fitting that timeline with those guys. And I think you're right. Like he's not too much of a demanding player either to take too many shots away from a guy like Jalen Green who's still trying to grow. He kind of or Sengun who's still trying to grow as a big. Like I think he's the type of player that he can fit in where he gets in, especially at this stage of his career where he's really going to show himself in important games and important moments. Yeah. So if I'm the Rockets, yeah, I think that's one way to go for it for sure. I think working
still
out that
trying to trade Jimmy Butler on you. Still trying to do it.
You can keep trying. I'm gonna resent it until it actually happens, even if it logically does make sense to do. But moving on to more on the draft, one of the picks I did really like too was Castle going to the Spurs, getting them a defensive guard who's shown some offensive promise as well in Stephen Castle. I think he's a guy that can fit really nicely with Wemby. When the mock-ups were going up, he was one of the players I wanted to go to the Spurs, and to see that pan out has been nice to see. And in his couple of summer league games, like when I've watched him play, his shooting has looked better than advertised. His guard play has been good. Him getting to the basket is just as good, and his defense looks like it's going to translate as well. So I think him being there for the Spurs is a great pick. And with them also getting Chris Paul to kind of guide him, I think is going to be excellent as well. It kind of reminds me in a different sense of when Chris Paul was with OKC and he had Shea under his belt. And Shea picked up a lot of little tricks from him, just how to get to his mid-range, how to pull that off. And he's taken that to a whole another level, MVP type level, some might say. As well, I think Castle is the type of player who can feed off of that from Chris Paul as well. I see some of the things that Shea kind of had early in his career that can translate to Castle as well. So I'm interested to see how that pans out going into next season.
Well, part of Castle's like scouting report was like, if this kid develops a shot, if he can develop an outside shot, he's got Shea level potential, right? Yeah. So it's pretty interesting that like that's where you immediately went, was like, oh well, this kid's got something. So the Spurs could be building a quiet monster here.
Yes.
And
like I wouldn't be shocked if we look back in this draft in like 2 to 3 years and we're like, oh, he's the best player in this draft.
Oh yeah,
like
I wouldn't be shocked at all.
Yeah.
The worst part is in that same 2 to 3 years, we might be like, the effing Spurs, they're so good. I hate them. Wish they would lose some games.
Yeah. They become the OKC of this year in a couple of years, potentially, if they keep drafting and developing guys like that. Also from the draft, so you talked about Topic a little bit. Yeah, with OKC, I think that was a good pick for them. They're the type of team that can wait it out They can wait out the injury. They can develop him. They can see what they have with him, and he won't be forced into a situation where he has to deliver right away. But if he can deliver, he'll get valuable experience playing winning basketball, like right off from his rookie year, which is a real benefit for any rookie, I find.
Well, and it brings a lot more playmaking back into the team, especially after the Josh Giddey trade. Guy that can either just play as Shea's backup or move over to the 2, do a little extra ball handling, a little extra movement, hit an outside shot here or there.
Yeah.
I think he was best player available when they
Yeah.
drafted, but I think it's going to work out really well. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I think that was a good one. Other notable picks. Oh, the one I did really like was Minnesota. They traded up to draft Dillingham. And we know they had a lot of like issues in the playoffs with scoring, and they went out and they made sure they got a scorer in the draft, which I think is, with the way that the CBA has panned out this year, it looks like you're gonna have to put a lot of stock in finding your needs through the draft now, whether it be the first round or second round or with two-way guys. So I think Minnesota's spending a little bit just to move up and get the player that they absolutely needed to get. Was a really big move for them.
Dillingham has not shown really excellently in summer league. Now I haven't watched all of his summer league, but it's also just summer league. I still believe in the player. I believe in the idea. I thought it was a good move. I really did. Especially because Minnesota is one of those teams where they're a little bit asset strapped.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever they can do to find good, interesting players that could potentially help them long term, it's a great move. It's a great move.
Yeah.
So hopefully it works out for them, because somebody's got to beat Boston.
Yeah, someone's got to do it. Someone's got to do it. And I don't know if it's coming from the East, but so we got to make sure someone in the West is able to do it. But staying out West with Memphis, I thought an interesting pick for them because they've been looking high and low for a big man to play next to Jaren Jackson Jr. since he does not love playing the 5. So they went out this summer and their main priority was to get a big man, and they draft one with Edie, our Canadian here. So what do you think about that fit for them and for Edie?
I like it. I like it a lot, especially as a person who was very interested to see where Edie would go. 2-time college player of the year, Zach Edey. Really classic kind of big man game. Continues to move better than people expect, which is really good. Jaren Jackson there to, do the extra movement and the extra defense. I think it can be a really good pairing. I really do. I think it can be a very good front court. And if it doesn't work out, it won't take long before, like, Memphis will be able to pick up a big at the deadline if they need to, right? And probably not spend a lot to get one. And I can't wait for the pick and rolls between Edie and Ja Morant.
I don't know if he's performing.
I got Ja Rule on the mind. Right? I'm dating myself a little bit, but there you go.
No, but yeah, I think that's going to be big, no pun intended. The Ja Morant and the Edie pick and roll, seeing Jaren Jackson space on that. I'm intrigued to see what that will all look like. Because we know Jaren Jackson Jr., like the one thing he will shoot from 3 and he will make it that you have to guard him. He'll launch anything from out there as fast as he can. So he's still going to be respected from 3, and that'll give them enough space to have Edie do whatever he needs to do on the block. And he won't be pressured again to be one of these stretch big guys. He can be that maybe in the future, but right away he's not going to be forced to do that when you have a guy like Jaren Jackson Jr. you're going to play next to. I think the last thing on the draft there before we move on to more of the offseason moves that happened was I just had a little confusion with what Portland was doing. They got a highly touted prospect in Donovan Clelligan. So they drafted a big. when last offseason they made it a priority to trade for a big in DeAndre Ayton. I don't really see the two playing next to each other. And they also traded for another big last year in Robert Williams, who didn't get to play last year due to injury, but I think he should be back shortly. So I'm not too sure what Portland's really going with here. You have any ideas?
Portland just wants to trade with Memphis at the deadline.
That's their stockpiling for them.
That's their whole plan. They're like, we're gonna get 3 seconds out of Memphis. This is gonna be great. No, I definitely think one of them is gonna be moved, and depending on how good Donovan looks, perhaps both of those guys. There will always be teams that need serviceable centers, and I think DeAndre Ayton brings one thing. I think Robert Williams brings another thing. So they're gonna have suitors. They're just not gonna get like a ton of stuff back for either of those guys. But it's gonna help them change and shape the roster. Obviously, Portland wants to be young. Obviously, they want to go for one of the heavy hitters in next year's draft.
Yeah.
They want to be in the Cooper Flag conversation, the Ace Bailey conversation. So we'll see. We'll see. Who knows? Maybe Scoot takes a huge jump and they are in the play-in conversation.
I mean, there is like talent there, right? Like he was the second or third overall last year.
Third overall.
Yeah. Miller went second. So you still got the third overall pick from last year. So there's definitely like upside to be had there. I wish he was kind of playing summer league though, Scoot. I guess he feels he's beyond that, but I wish he was playing. And they have Shaden Sharp there. They have Anthony Simon. So they have the young guys there. I mean, I don't know how long Anthony's going to stay there, but Shaden Sharp looks promising at the wing position for them. So you can see the skeletons of like a little bit of a roster coming to form there. I just don't. And if Donovan is a guy, maybe he's the one that you want to build around versus a guy like Ayton and Robert Williams. And since you're in this position where it doesn't really matter what you do right now, you're going to be bad regardless. You just take the best player available, right? And you try to figure it out later, which is probably their thinking.
I really want to see Simons go to Orlando.
They need that scorer, man.
They need that scorer. They need that shooter. They need that point guard. And I think Simons could be a point guard.
And if he's not going to do all that playmaking duties, you still have Suggs for that. But you definitely need the scoring.
Suggs,
the scoring
Black. Yeah, you got a lot of guys over there.
Yeah. So you have those guys.
You still have Markelle Fultz.
He's a free agent.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, no one's picked him up.
Unsigned?
Yeah, no.
I thought he was still under Orlando's tent. My apologies.
No. Yeah. He's out there. Someone save Fultz. Someone pick him up. He still got a couple years on him. I think.
Former first overall pick.
Yeah. Give him a chance. I'll give him a chance before I give Ben Simmons a chance. I think at this point. But yeah, I think with Portland, that's kind of where it is with them. I think Anthony Simons. I think he needs to move out elsewhere, and you kind of let these young guys grow and see what they can give you. Maybe they get there. Maybe the Magic pull something like that to get Anthony Simons and one of these other teams. Maybe Detroit too can use like a scorer like that. They just need some type of shooting. I also don't know what Detroit's doing with Jaden Ivey. Detroit's a whole other conversation that we'll probably get to a lot another day. They did make some changes in their front office and with their coaches, but yeah, that's Detroit. Moving on to the offseason review, though. I guess the major thing is the New York Sixers, where they add Paul George. He's a prize free agent of this offseason. They add Paul George, they add Andre Drummond, they add Eric Gordon, they add Caleb Martin, and they drafted Jared McCain as well. What do you make of their offseason so far?
Yeah, I don't mind it, but I don't know if, like, for example, if I'm Boston, if I'm necessarily worried yet. I mean, I just don't know if Paul George is really what he was 5 years ago as far as like a difference maker. It's still going to be Embiid's team and Maxi's team. I like the Jared McCain pick. He's looked good. I think he'll certainly be a rotation player for them. I think Paul George is going to be an impact player for them. But I don't see them as like a super team. Does
Yeah,
that
I'm
make
not.
sense?
Yeah, I don't know if I see them as that too. I think in the season they should be really good though. I think in the season they finish like they should be a top 2 team in the East. Especially with Nick Nurse over there coaching. Like I think he figures it out and gets the right guys playing. I think their defense is more of a concern to me now at this point. Like their offense should be sound. But I like the fit between Maxi, Paul George, and Embiid. I like how all those players can fit around each other because you can have Maxi and Embiid run their pick and roll stuff, and you can have Paul George on the weak side floating around, coming off of screens and hitting open jumpers like he's used to doing that with the Sixers or with the Clippers before. He did that a little bit when he was playing with Westbrook on OKC. So him having another ball handler next to him and also Embiid to work off of, I think that's going to be some good stuff. Also, it brings me back to when Embiid had JJ Redick and they did a lot of like dribble handoff stuff. I think they could do a lot of that similar stuff with Paul George, who's even more dynamic, but maybe not as good of a shooter, but pretty close to as good of a shooter as JJ Redick was, especially off ball. So that stuff excites me. My worry for them, I like them getting Caleb Martin as well, a guy who's played in the playoffs. Versatile defender. They still have Oubre, so I think their wings are kind of set there. They should be okay there. Their bigs, I'm a little bit worried on once Embiid goes, because Embiid's not staying healthy for the whole year. So once Embiid gets hurt, I'm a lot more worried about this Sixers team. And going into the playoffs, I'll be concerned about this Sixers team because we've seen in the past, like, and once it gets to the playoffs, Embiid's health becomes more of a factor and his play style becomes more of a factor. Same thing with Paul George. Sometimes he's healthy for the playoffs, sometimes he's not healthy for the playoffs. And again, he's kind of, you're able to play him in the playoffs. Like he's not as much of a threat as like Kawhi was a guy in the Clippers, and you felt it more when he was out more so than when Paul George was out. So I think once it comes to playoff time, I'm a little bit more skeptical of this move. But I think for the season, to get them through the season, especially when or if Embiid gets hurt, they're much more equipped to deal with that.
Yeah, I agree. I like it. Overall, I like it. And Paul can step up in those moments, like when Embiid gets hurt. It's also depressing that we've reached the point that we talk about Embiid when we say when Embiid gets hurt, not
it's
if.
a shame. Yeah.
But it's really just, it is kind of the truth.
He's not getting any younger.
He's not getting any younger, not getting any healthier. Yeah, I don't know. Are they better than Milwaukee? And if so, by how much?
I think they're better than if I had to look at the East right now, I would probably put the Sixers. I'll put Boston in their own tier, and I'll put like Sixers, Knicks in like their secondary tier, and then I'll put like Bucks, Indiana, Miami, Magic in this like other tier. Oh, Cavaliers as well, and like this like third tier where whoever's the healthiest will be the best best team out of that bunch type of thing.
You think Miami still deserves to be in that tier?
Yeah, I think they finish. If I was to pick it today, I would probably pick them to finish around 6 to 9. Just because the bottom of the East is just so bad that like all those teams are just going to reap up wins. And if we're looking at a team that's healthier than last year, like if we're going to say Bam's not going to miss like a month, and he's going to be healthy for the whole time. And if Jimmy is on this prove it year where he kind of has to play to get the contract, whoever's going to give him the contract, he has to play this year to kind of earn that contract back from whoever. So if we're looking at those two things, I think their top 2 guys are still better than most top 2 guys. And I think their young guys are better than a lot of the other teams' young guys. It's just whether or not, I just think they're top tier offensively is where I worry about them. And I think, Celtics easily ahead of them, Sixers easily ahead of them in the season. But I think all these other teams, the Bucks, Indiana, Knicks ahead of them. But I think like Bucks, Indiana, Magic, Cavs all still have like their questions. Maybe I'm underselling the Cavs a little bit. Maybe they should be closer to that tier with the Sixers. But the rest of those teams for sure, I feel like it's going to depend on who's healthy and how all those teams kind of gel. Because it's hard for a team like Indiana to come back a year to 2 years in a row to do what they did, and they're not going to surprise anybody this year. And we saw later on in the year how they kind of looked a little more human, especially on the offensive end, because teams got used to that style of play from them. They did do well in the playoffs. Not to take that away from them, they did do well in the playoffs, but I could see them kind of staying not getting too much better season wise. And if that's the case, then like this year, I think all those teams are going to be in the same tier. They're all separated by like a game or two to end the season.
So here's my thing about Miami. I don't think they have a power forward, and I don't think they have much of a bench, at least from an outside perspective. You can correct me, right? Because you watch the team obviously a lot more than me, but I worry about their depth, and I think they have a glaring hole in their starting lineup.
I think their front court is much better now than last year. Like I'm very comfortable with Jovic there, and I'm comfortable with them drafting Keller Weir. I think that was a good pick for them. I think eventually the hope is that I don't think it's going to happen this year. Like I think that's the hope some people have, that he'll play next to Bam this year, but I don't think that's the case. I think that'll be like something closer to the end of this year, maybe more so a next year thing once he gets, a little bit bigger. He can shoot outside. Bam's starting to shoot a little more outside. So I think that fit there is where that's what they're looking to go to eventually. I think they would even maybe move Jovic down to the 3 and just play a bigger style of basketball, because Jovic is versatile enough on offense to he runs pick and roll. He can shoot, he can play make, he does all that type of stuff. He likes to run in transition. My issue with him would be more so guarding smaller guys on the defensive end. But my issue with Miami is their point guard. It's going to be their point guard. Terry Rozier's a nice addition, but he's not a playmaking point guard. He's still a scoring point guard. I don't think they really need that type of player, especially with Hero. I think the Hero Rozier fit is much more of a concern than their front court issues at this moment. Like I would have preferred them to go and get someone like Tyus Jones who can just kind of run an offense, set guys up, kind of like how they had Kyle do before he got a little too old to do that type of stuff. But that's the player that they think they lack the most. A guard, especially a defensive guard who can help out on that side of the court. But for the front court, I'm pretty okay with. I like where they're going with there. I think Jovic will start to begin the year. I think if they want to go small, they still have Haywood Highsmith. They have Hami and Jimmy who can kind of slide up and play the 3 and the 4. I think they'll be fine on that end of the court. But the guard play is where I look, is where I get a little bit more of my worry with the Heat. Which is why I probably feel as if they're still in that 4 to 5 to 9 realm, where it's like whoever is the healthiest and whoever gets on a hot streak. Because the East to me isn't too intimidating at this point. Yes, Miami didn't get as much better as some of these other teams, but a lot of these other teams kind of stayed pat too, except for the top.
You raise a good point. I'm a little bit more comfortable with your pick.
Glad I can convince you just a smidge.
just a smidge.
But yeah, that for the Sixers, I like it. I like what they did, but I'm concerned about the playoffs. I'm not terrified about them in the playoffs. But another big move, again, is out west though. It's Dejounte going to the Pelicans. They traded Dejounte to the Pelicans, and they got back Larry Nance Jr., a couple picks, two first rounders, and a move that it looks like they just want to break up the Trae Young, Dejounte Murray pairing. What do you think about that move when you first heard of it?
I thought it was good for Atlanta. I think Atlanta is like properly resetting. Even if it's slow, they're properly resetting. I think it looks really good for New Orleans. I kind of think it buys Brandon Ingram time now that they have, because like CJ McCollum to me is more of a shooting guard, not a point guard. Right?
Yeah,
and Dejounte is a point guard, right? He does all the point guard things, and when he was playing on Atlanta, he could do that. I'm more excited for him to play on New Orleans than when he got traded to Atlanta. So I think it buys the team time. if nothing else.
Yeah, and I like that move next to Zion too. Just the fun that they can have like on pick and rolls and stuff like that, and they can even have Zion run the pick and roll and have Murray screen, all that type of stuff. I think it's a yeah. I thought it was a solid move. They were looking for a point guard, a true point guard, to bring to the Pelicans. They were looking at Garland at one point. So I think Dejounte is a nice player for them, and he's a good two-way guy on both ends of the court. You're gonna have to deal with him defensively, and then Alvarado next defensively. Like that's just not fun. That's not fun for any offense to have to go through.
No.
But the other thing with the Pelicans is it looked
Herb
like they're
Jones
trying.
is
Yeah, Herb
skulking
Jones is
around.
there. Yeah, just
Yeah.
they're taking up passing lanes. It's just man, that team's gonna be something else on the defensive end next year. But on the other side of it, it seemed like they were trying to move Brandon Ingram after they made that deal for Dejounte Murray, but they weren't able to really find any takers. What does that say about like Ingram versus what does it say about maybe the league in general?
Yeah, so like Ingram's an interesting case in that like I don't know if you're just moving Ingram for the sake of moving Ingram. I think you move him if the right package is available, if the right players are available. Otherwise, he's more valuable to hold on to. I don't know where he fits, and this is my problem. I don't know where he fits, and I don't know what teams have available the type of player that New Orleans would need, right?
Yeah, because New Orleans is looking at like some of these bigs to kind of replace because they have Herb, they have Trey Murphy to fill out the wings right now, and they want to give those guys minutes. They're like, we want to play you more, but we have this guy in Ingram, so we can't really play you. And
Is it Brooklyn? Is it a Claxton, Cam Thomas
something like that,
kind
yeah.
of deal? And then Ingram can go and just be the guy in Brooklyn.
I think some of the issue too is with Ingram, his teams didn't want to pay him. So he was looking at he's in his last year of his contract and wants to also get like I think his max, which I think was like 210 million, but I think that he said he would settle for 200. But I think
all these players are taking sacrifices. Jalen
that's the
Brunson,
thing. Yeah.
LeBron,
That's the
took a little bit less.
took a little less.
It's big
He
for
wouldn't take
LeBron.
it. Yeah, he doesn't usually do that. He usually keeps you on edge every year. But I think that's part of it too. Is like no one wants to pay out an Ingram so much, especially with how you get penalized in this new CBA. I think we mentioned it before in a couple episodes before that like the CBA is going to force organizations to have a real negotiation with max players. Like they're not going to just give you the max anymore because it takes up too much of the cap, and it limits you in filling out the rest of your roster. So I think part of the issue is Ingram needs to go to a decentish to good team where he can kind of be the guy-ish on offense, one or two on offense. But they also going to have to want to be able to pay you and afford to pay you.
I think Ingram might look pretty good on Chicago.
That's a team where it would make sense for it. But what would Chicago? Vucevic is there. You can get off of Vucevic.
Vucevic. Yeah, Vucevic back. Although, do you want Vucevic and Zion together? Is there going to be enough spacing there? Enough movement? Enough defensive prowess in your
The
front
defense is where
court?
I'll be. Offensively, I think would be okay, but I think defensively is where you get a little worried because Zion's not like a world beater on defense, and definitely not Vucevic isn't either.
Yeah.
So, that's where I think there would be a huge issue.
Yeah, but like Giddy, Kobe White, and Brandon Ingram, that
And
could be
Chicago
really
should have
fun.
no worries with paying Ingram right now. Like who else
No,
are they
not
gonna
at
pay?
all.
Yeah,
Yeah. Who are they paying?
yeah, yeah.
They didn't pay DeMar.
Yeah, they didn't pay
Right?
Demar. They don't want to pay Levine. They're trying their hardest to get rid of Levine.
They don't want they're not gonna re-sign Lonzo when his runs out.
No, yeah. Unless he has a miraculous revival of his career, which I don't foresee happening. But yeah, it's tough for the Pelicans there because I think they've built something good, but I think Ingram while being a good player, it kind of takes away a little bit of what they want to do since they've drafted so well. This is the problem with drafting well. You drafted Herb Jones, you drafted Trey Murphy, and you've drafted guys who can easily replace, not easily, but who do replace what you get in Ingram for a much more malleable cost, I would say, than Ingram. And now it's finding a partner for Ingram to go off and have his time to shine again.
Yeah, and it's tough because Ingram's a good player. Like, let's not slight this guy too much. He's a good player. He's a guy you want on your team, but you want him on your team if it makes sense, right? Partly because his time on New Orleans has shown that if it's not going his way, is he a great teammate? Is he the guy you want around? Like, maybe he hasn't really shown anything on court to say that he isn't, but there's like, why are there so many Ingram rumors, right? Like, why are there so much buzz out there about him like needing to get off this team?
Yeah,
He's a good
something's
player, right? Why isn't it working? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it can't just be the ball dominance.
No,
There are
it
a
has to be more
lot
than
of
that.
ball dominant
Yeah.
players in this league.
Yeah. There has to be more to that pairing that we're just not hearing about. And I bet we'll hear this the second he gets moved. There'll be like there'll be 1,000 articles telling us exactly why. Like when Klay left the Warriors, which is next up on the docket. As soon as he was gone, there's articles everywhere saying about how much of a problem he is to deal with, which is crazy. But Warriors do lose Klay Thompson. He goes to the Mavs. Warriors add Buddy Hield though, and Kyle Anderson as well, and D'Anthony Melton, which I think are all good little additions here. They definitely needed someone like D'Anthony Melton off the bench to help out with the guard play. He'll replace his Klay shooting. You lose a little bit on defense, but I think you do what you kind of can there with the limited assets that you have.
Well, and it's like, is Hield even going to be the starter? Because they got Podzimski. Is that how you say his name? And he's really come along. Like, he's really come along. You'll probably have another small leap from Jonathan Kuminga. You've got Moses Moody. Like, there are the youth in Golden State that we sometimes forget about. Like, yeah, maybe their offseason hasn't been crazy exciting. I did actually really like the Buddy Hield pickup though. Because they could still be that movement shooting juggernaut that they've been in the past. And they could probably call Portland at the deadline and get a cheap big.
Yeah. They probably can definitely get like a Robert Williams for like absolutely nothing at the deadline. Yeah, so I think they're set up just fine. I know it seems like Warriors fans are a little upset about how this offseason have went. They've been in a lot of rumors for a lot of guys. Like they're very close to, it sounds like, to getting Paul George at one point. They're trying for Laurie marketing. Like they're trying to make this big swing to keep Steph happy, to keep the team competitive. They just haven't been able to do it, and that's sometimes just the name of the game, how it goes sometimes. But yeah, like you, I agree. I like the Hield pickup when it happened because I thought, yeah, offensively, I think there's even a graphic or stat going around that in the last few years, Hield hit more threes than Steph did. So he's a prolific 3-point shooter, Buddy Hield. So I think you don't lose anything there on the shooting end of the court. Again, my concern comes more so on the defensive end. You'll be playing, if you do, like you said, they might not start together. It could be Moody, it could be Podzimski, it could be any of these guys sliding up or down. You can even start D'Anthony Melton for all we know. But playing a guy like Steph and Hield together, my only concern would be how small they were. Steph and Klay worked together because Klay was bigger and he was able to guard bigger guys when he was more able-bodied than he is now, healthier than he is now. But that's why that was so deadly, is because Klay was able to guard all those guys, and you wouldn't lose anything defensively while having an insane offense. On the other end of that, on the other end of that trade, though, you do have the Mavs getting Klay. They also added Najee Marshall and Quentin Grimes in this offseason. So, and they lost Derrick Jones Jr. So they really leaned into getting more 3-and-D guys. Grimes I liked in the past. He had a troubling year last year, but he's moving around. He didn't really find his footing. So hopefully coming into a team fresh with a training camp and all of that resets him in a nice way. And Najee Marshall, who's probably one of the lower end 3-and-D guys, but still like a solid-ish role guy who can kind of plug in and not hurt you. He won't hurt you anywhere. And he'll kind of keep things even, which isn't a bad thing. To not be noticed is sometimes a good thing. Sometimes a good thing. So what do you think make of the Mavs little offseason there?
Yeah, I mean, ever since the Mavs deadline, we've been talking about how they're asset poor. So whenever the Mavs hire or acquire interesting players, I think it's a win. And I think that's all they've done this offseason is acquire interesting players. Klay at the end of his career, yeah, you do wish he moved like he did before. You wish he could defend like he did before. I think he's going to be woken up a little bit that like, there could be days that you come off the bench here and that's all you're earning. But I hope it's a rejuvenation. I hope that Luka's like gravity opens up even more time for Klay. Because I really enjoyed the Mavs run. I actually did. And I'd like to see them continue to be a player in the West for a while. I kind of still worry about their power forward situation, their big situation. I like Derek Lively a lot, but I want more assurance up front. Oh gosh, what's his name? He went to Detroit. He was a former Sixer. Was overpaid on the Sixers. Power forward.
Went to the Sixers this year, this offseason.
He went to Detroit this year from the Sixers. Everybody thought he was overpaid for the longest time. I thought he would have been.
Tobias Harris.
Tobias Harris, I thought would have been a good buy low candidate for the Mavs, but he went to Detroit.
I think he's from Detroit too.
Oh, that makes sense. Go play at home. That's always nice. So I still want something like they'd never get him, but Jaren Jackson Jr. on the Mavs would
make a lot of sense. Yeah, they need that type of player.
Awesome. Yeah. Where they find that player, how they find that player, how they afford that player, I don't know, but it's like what I want for them.
Yeah. No, it's tough for the Mavs, but I think they make do with what little they have, and I think going off of the Luka, Kyrie, and Klay partnership should be. I think there's gonna be some nights where Klay just gonna be like on fire to the 10th degree. With Luka and Kyrie just able to find him in all these open spots. Not to say that Steph and Dre are great playmakers themselves, but it's just a different type of playmaking you're getting from Luka and Kyrie. Like a lot of pick and roll stuff, a lot more pick and roll stuff, and Klay on the weak side doing stuff more so than you get with the Warriors, where it's a lot more of like these post splits and off ball movement and motion basketball. So I think him playing in a different system should be interesting to see, and how that works with Luka should definitely be open up some great offensive games. Because like I like their run this year. I thought it was a fun run in the playoffs. I like what they did, but they did fall short offensively, especially once it came to Boston. Like it was too much for Luka and Kyrie to just do on their own. So I think adding a guy who can just provide that type of spark helps. I think they do need more than just Klay and Najee and Grimes, but I think like you said, it's a step in the right direction. And if some of these guys don't pan out, you're going to be able to flip them again. So I think it's a good enough move for the Mavs this offseason for what they have, what they can do. I think the last team we could talk about here is the Kings, because they added DeMar DeRozan. He was the most coveted player in the last final days there in free agency. Once all the other guys went, DeRozan's like, hey, wait a minute. I don't want to be with the Bulls. I don't want to be here anymore. And I think the Bulls are kind of like, we don't really want to pay you anymore either. So let's find you somewhere to go. But because of how late they decided this, his options were a little bit more limited, and he's able to end up on the Kings. So first thoughts on that?
Good for Demar for making it back to California. I love Demar. I think he's a great player. He has his limitations, but he's really grown. Like when he went to the Spurs, he learned to be a good playmaker. I think that's going to play up well um, for that Sacramento team because I think there's going to be more ball movement on that team than people think. I still hear like Kevin Herter's name in rumors, which I think is a bad idea. I think you've got a lot of guys who can shoot twos. You need guys who can shoot threes.
You're gonna need some spacers,
Um,
yeah.
I think it would be really good if they could pick up like Doug McDermott and Luke Kennard on minimums because I believe both guys are still free agents
Mm-hmm.
and both guys shoot the heck out of the three ball. I don't think that the Kings are going to be much of a defensive team. And I think they should look to Indiana for inspiration. I think you just lean all into offense. Just
Run up the
move the
score.
ball, shoot the ball, cut, drive. Like they've got guys who can do it all. You've got a center hub in Sabonis. Like you're gonna get a ton of offensive rebounds from that guy. Uh, just go all in on offense, and I think they got to do it, and I think there's
Yeah.
still guys available to do it. So I'm talking myself into it as we speak right now. I like kind of want to go get a purple jersey, right?
Well, maybe the
Purple
Raptors will give
Demar
you a
jersey.
purple
Yeah,
jersey.
fingers crossed.
Fingers
Let's
crossed.
get that rebrand going.
Yeah, let's get it going. No, I think I'm with you there. Like, I think they kind of have to lean offensively. I think this is a big year for the Kings because Darian Fox didn't sign his extension. He kind of waited it out. He said he wanted to see what they do to kind of make them more of a win now team. So I see this DeMar move as something to appease Darian Fox. So we'll see if that pays off in the long run. Like if that's a big enough move. I know Fox does like DeMar, but who knows how he likes him as a teammate when things start to when it starts to get winning time and all that type of stuff. How that pans out. But I think I agree with you with offense has got to be the priority now. They got to go all in on the offensive end, and hopefully that offense can outweigh their limitations on the defensive end. Because if you're playing DeMar and Sabonis together, that's going to be a tough look for your defense. Tough look. Only Keegan Murray can only do so much. I think this is also a big year for Keegan Murray. Maybe I'll sneak him onto an MIP thing. Maybe that I think this is a big year for him. I think if he's going to show out, this is a year for Keegan Murray to really span out. And if he does pan out, maybe that makes moving a guy like Kevin Huerter a little more malleable than it would have been a year ago. Because we've seen some big games from Keegan, but not at the consistent level enough to feel super confident in that being your long-term guy.
I don't think he's a max guy, but I think he's a guy you want, right? Like I think
Yeah.
I think he could be a better version of Cam Johnson. Which to me, like Cam Johnson's a good player. Like Cam Johnson's a player I want on the Raptors. But yeah, I think Keegan can be better. I just don't think he's a max guy. I think he's a fourth option, but a really good one and a really
One of the good
solid
ones.
fourth option. And on this team,
Would
he
you
should be the fourth option.
would Kuzma be like a fair outcome from, or would you say he would end up a little bit better than a Kuzma?
I think Kuzma, if he became a Kuzma, I think you're really happy. Like you're laughing. You're like, this guy can do a lot of things on the basketball court. Partly, like one of the things about Kuz is that he seemed to find his confidence, especially after leaving LA, right? Especially after getting away from LeBron, because LeBron just like took all his shots. Um, like Kuzma's a guy that you could have had for cheap at one point, and now you can't. And Kuzma's a guy that, like, I think could fit a lot of teams and fix a lot of teams' problems. Um, I wouldn't say he's a superstar or even a star or even maybe even like an all-star. But Kuzma is a guy that I think more people should want on their team.
Mhm. No,
Like
I
I think
agree.
Miami should
I was
really want a Kuzma.
I was just saying, like, I wouldn't mind Kuzma on Miami. Like, he provides the shooting, he can play next to Jimmy, he does all those type of things that you kind of want. And then you don't have to fast track some of these young guys. You have a guy
Yeah.
there. But then he takes away from your young guys. So I understand the dilemma there. It's like, which way are you going? Pick a direction. Are you trying to
Yeah.
win or are you trying to develop young guys? But I would like a Kuzma. Kuzma would be nice on Miami. I think he provides the necessary offense that they need. Trade Tyler for him, please. Just do something with Tyler. Just do something with that guy. I think that's it on the offseason. I guess the last quick shout out I'll give is to the Magic. They re-signed a lot of their guys. Franz, I think, resigned for a ton of
Yep.
money. But I think I like them getting KCP. They resigned Mo Wagner as well, but KCP was a good get for them. And we're talking about a little bit of their shooting woes and stuff like that at the guard position. I think KCP helps out a lot. I think that's a huge loss for Denver. I think Denver has a lot of issues moving forward into the next year. Like these last couple of years, they've lost maybe one too many of their good role players that helped them win their championship. So I think bouncing back from that is going to be hard for the Nuggets, but I do like what Magic have done there. Since they weren't able to get anyone too marquee, they're still able to fill a need that they needed filling during the offseason.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And you talk about teams getting like veteran presence. I think that's absolutely what like Kuzma's going to bring. He's going to bring that shooting, but he's also going to be like, guys, this is what it takes to win. Right?
Yeah,
Like
he's actually a winner. We like to
yeah,
forget, but he's actually a winner. I think we
like
look back at that Lakers trade. They traded what, KCP, they traded Kuzma, they traded away Alex Caruso. I don't think they traded away. They just didn't keep him. They didn't elect to keep him all to get Westbrook. That one offseason. I think we look back on that trade. Like that was a very baffling trade for for the Lakers to make after winning a championship. Sometimes you
not
just can't
worse than
stand
the
that.
Paul George trade though.
That's a pretty hard. I mean, at least you're trying to get Kawhi as well.
Yeah, you got Kawhi out of the
Yeah,
deal,
yeah.
right?
No,
But
that's
now Kawhi is a man on an island, right?
like literally. I think he's in the. I don't know where he
Like
is right now.
Kawhi might be like, I'll play 20 games until you get me a team.
Yeah. He
Like
really
we might
might
as
be.
well just get me healthy so that in 3 years when we have a team, I can do something.
I can actually play for you guys. Yeah, it's a rough scene out in the Clippers. There's really not much for me to say about them because they lost a bunch of people and it's not looking good
Clippers
for
might
their.
get Cooper Flag, which is
Not looking.
no, but they won't because they don't have their picks.
I don't even have their picks. I mean, and that would have been a great look for the rebrand, but uh
Uh,
it's a tough scene. Tough scene over there in Clipper Nation, Clipperland, whatever they call their fans over there. Anything else? Any summer league tidbits before we head out of here?
no, I mean Raptors have a great summer league team, but it's full of guys you'll never hear of. Um, yeah, summer league. Like it's great to have ball back, and it hasn't even been that long. But I think it's going to be more Olympics than summer league this summer.
Yeah, that's where all the noise is going to be. I
Yeah,
will say from a Miami point of view, seeing those, they have a really exciting summer league team, more exciting than the regular team, maybe. But what I do like about their summer league team, Hami came back to play because he was doing the USA stuff, so he was in Vegas, so he got to do a couple of the summer league games and he looked like he looked like he shouldn't be playing there, which is what you want from like a second year guy who's like was top
absolutely.
4, top 3 in rookie of the year
Yeah,
conversations. So he came back. He had more of a pull up. I think if he has a pull up jumper this year, that changes a lot for Miami and for him as well. I think that takes him to like that Gordon Hayward potential that we kind of can see, like when Gordon Hayward was good, potential that we could see. As well as we talked about a little bit earlier, like their draft pick, Kel Weir. Like I think he looked like a big. Like he's getting the numbers, he's getting the stats. defensively, he looks good. He's ball watches a lot. He's a young guy. He's gonna do that. A little slow in some areas, and he needs to put on weight. But I think you can see the raw potential there. Like I can see what you can see what they're looking at there. He's able to put up numbers even without reaching maybe even a half of what he can be. So being able to put up big numbers on both ends of the court is good. But I do think he needs to get bigger if they want to play him in the way that I think they do want to play him. And they had some good guard play with like Isaiah Stewart. I want to say his name was Isaiah Stevens. Off of the two-way, I think he's another guy that they should if they're going to give someone a two-way to play point guard, like I mentioned earlier, I'm worried about that guard position. He's a guy that they should continue to look at and maybe offer him one of those two ways to play that position because he's a phenomenal passer for a summer league guy.
I said it before we came on air here. I said it to you that like when Khalil Ware got drafted by Miami, the rest of the league went crap. Right? Here's a guy who maybe he suffered from being over scouted, who knows? But for all of his gifts, he was being questioned over red flags as well. Like, does this guy work hard enough? Is he ever gonna like really live up to his potential? He can move, he can shoot, he can do the things, but he's too inconsistent. And then he goes to Miami and everybody goes, well, he's going to be a good player.
Well, they're going to figure it out. Yeah. If anyone could figure him out and get him on the right track, it will be Miami's, which is why I was like going into the draft, I want them to take more of a guard because like I'm going to keep hammering home. They need a guard. But they also did need some big man help. So I think drafting a guy there who could potentially play next to Bam in the future is the way to go. And if they're able to iron out some of those red flags, which I think they will, like I think the first day that they drafted him, they had Alonzo Mourning right next to him. So like you're gonna work hard if you're next to Alonzo Mourning. And he does sound like he wants it. Sometimes with these guys, like they said the same thing about Anthony Edwards, right? When it's like coming out of college, or like, does this guy really want it? Sometimes you're just in college and you just don't have that drive for college. But once you see that it's your job now, and this is going to be your livelihood, and this is how you're going to make your money, it changes you a bit sometimes for some of these younger guys. So hopefully that's the case with Ware. Yeah, so I think that'll do it for this episode of the NBA Hangout presented by Playbook Sports. Thank y'all for hanging out with us. You could follow us at the NBA Hangout on Twitter. You can follow me at BJAY93_. Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. You can find Dave here every week or every time we do a podcast. It might not be weekly in the off season, but when we do podcasts, he will be here. Thank y'all. Peace.